Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Reason We Learn. I'm your host, Deb Philman. At The Reason We Learn, we aspire to be part of the solution. The purpose of this show is to take a good, honest, potentially painful look at the way kids are being educated. We know we can do better, and this is where we'll talk about how. Let's learn something. Hey, y'all. Good evening. Happy Monday. So it's November 6th, 2023, and this is Dissident Dispatch, a show where I try to present the more hard-hitting content, and I don't know, I'm not really exposing anything per se. I'm just showing you stuff that's out there for you to see, but you probably don't go looking for because you have other things to do, like make a living, eat, sleep, get dressed, go to the bathroom. Pretty much everything is seeming more important than spending hours and hours on the internet looking at what fresh hell is being offered up in education in America. But that's why I'm here. I'm here to help. I'm here to fill in the gaps. Tonight's topic is about it's teacher education. That's what we're talking about. And I'm going to not only show you some things about how teachers are being educated right now in the colleges of education in America in terms of the coursework and the philosophy underlying, but I'm also going to show you some of the trends that are up and coming in terms of education, because if it's a trend in education, that tells you what the new trend in teacher education will be. So I'll show you kind of what they're doing now and the bent they have, and then show you where they expect things to go between now and, let's say, 2030-ish. So you're ready. So you're prepared. You can decide ahead of time. Do I agree with this? I mean, let's say you don't have kids yet. Let's say you do, but they're real little. You can make some decisions before it's too late. Before we get started, I would like to ask you to please consider subscribing to this channel. If you are not already subscribed and you value this sort of research and content, it really helps if you subscribe to just the YouTube channel. Just hit subscribe to be notified when I make new content. That helps. You can also join my new Discord under Woke Screen. The information about that is in my link tree, which is linked below. And you could just like this video and share it with others. So if they are interested in what's going on in education, they can join us. Go ahead and make your comments in the chat. I will try to do a better job. I apologize. I see what you guys say. I can't always respond quickly, but I'm going to try to do a better job of that today, because I really want to see what you're thinking about the stuff that I'm presenting. I just wish I had a producer because they could feed me things. Before I get started with the content, now that I've gotten done with the housekeeping, I want to preface this by saying there are still many wonderful teachers in America. There are still heroic teachers out there in the classrooms doing their damnedest to close the door and hide from the worst of the worst, to hold the line and get your kids something resembling an education. I can't quantify how many there are, what percentage there are. I know several of them personally. To me, they're heroes because they're working within a system that is just a soul-sucking mess. And I confess, I lack both the emotional stamina and the self-control to do it, because I would not be able to bite my tongue. So I want to make that clear, that when you hear me saying things about teacher education, when I show you things, when I talk about some of the more negative aspects of what's going on, I don't want anyone coming away thinking Deb just hates teachers, or that I'm making some blanket statement about all teachers. I'm not. Please do not hear that. I think we do have too many who are everything from ineffective to dangerous. So there are too many like that. I also think we have too many who could be good if they were able to at least have what it takes to, as I said, be sort of a rebel on the inside, and yet they're not willing for whatever reason. So I think we have too many of those two groups, which means that those who are wonderful and heroic are a dwindling group. The teacher shortage that you hear about so much is only getting bigger. And it is my theory, I cannot prove it, that the shortage is driven in part by early retirement and or resignation of some of these teachers, seasoned teachers who went into it for the right reasons and are just fed up for a wide variety of reasons. They may not all agree with me on a lot of things. Even some of these great teachers. There are great teachers out there who love public school. Think public school is great. They don't agree with me philosophically, but they still are effective in the classroom. There are teachers who are great, who agree with every word I say, but it's their job and they've got retirement, staring them down and they don't want to walk away from it. That's another category. So now that I've said that and disclaimed, I hope that everyone watching will, you know, hear what I say in that context and not just come away with this idea that I'm just a hater of teachers. What I do despise, however, is the ecosystem or environment, the sort of situation that we have with teacher education that is more likely to produce more of the ones we have too many of. And that includes the sort of spineless, the ones that are like, well, it's a job, it's a paycheck. I don't really care. I just do what I'm told. And I really do despise that system. I have nothing but scorn for the people who benefit the most from that system, with the tippy top. So the so-called, you know, uh, researchers, the people who, near as I can tell, are more interested in making a name for themselves and making money or putting their pet projects out there, their own personal philosophy, their own ideas, or supporting a political agenda than they are in any individual child's success. I do believe they're deeply cynical. I do believe many of them are malicious in terms of their sentiments about parents, their sentiments about children, their idea of what our society should look like and where certain people belong and where they don't belong. I do believe that to be true of a sizable number of people at the very top of the education ecosystem, the ones who make decisions about what we're going to spend our money on in terms of, research and investment and promoting and hiring and tenure and things like that. I think it's driven by all the wrong things. I think the consideration that is dead last is what is actually effective at getting children to learn in ways that make them personally competent. So individually, personally competent as an individual human being who can go out in the world someday when they're over 18 and function. I genuinely believe that the people at the top of the education world are just not even thinking about that. That's my honest opinion. Now, you may disagree. First thing I want to show you is actually a teacher. And that's why I wanted parents to come in. So this is a teacher speaking directly to parents. This would be, I imagine, one of the good ones, judging by her level of frustration. And, I plus I love her Rock'em Sock'em Robot, so I'm already a fan. Um, she is trying to tell you things are not right. Things are I can't imagine what it is like to be in her shoes right now. Maybe you've seen this on Twitter. But I'm going to share it with you because understand that by the time she gets the students as an AP teacher in high school, they've had dozens of teachers. And I say dozens plural because I'm including, the resource teachers, people like that. But if they've made it all the way through high school, where you have middle school and the first couple of years of high school, you have multiple teachers. When you listen to this, consider that. Consider how many teachers have passed these kids on through to the point where they get to her in the state that she describes. So let's listen.
Welcome back to another Teacher Day of As the World Freaking Turns. And I wanted to give out a parent memo to seek some help. I had an AP class today of 30 children and who will eventually take the AP exam. And when registering for College Board account, they have to include some easy information, things that they should know in kindergarten and learn in kindergarten, such as the names of their parents and their home address. Okay. And I want you to know that I received the following questions. Hey, can you help me? I don't know what my home address is. And that came from a 15-year-old, followed by, I'm not sure what my mother's last name is, to which I responded, do you have a relationship with your mother? Yes, Miss Walker, I live with my mother. Every day? Most days. Okay. And we don't know the last name of your mother? Nope. Nope. Also, from a 16-year-old, asked me, the teacher of 200 children, can you tell me what year I graduate from high school? Now, I don't know about y'all, but as a child of the 80s, we knew what year we graduated. We kind of counted it down. Like, wow, we only have 2 or 3 more years of this stuff. Not to be confused with, a child who asked me if their personal birth date was safe to put on College Board, or if they should be worried someone was going to steal their identity. And what I'm trying to tell you all at this point, if my kids can't give me their address or the name of their mother, if they have one, I don't know how we're going to learn that the earth is not flat. So happy Thursday.
So there you have that, one teacher's experience. Now, as she mentioned, and as I mentioned, this is an AP class, advanced placement. That means when they get done with the class and they take the test, the idea is to get college credit. The material is supposed to be college level. That's the whole point of it. You're taking the equivalent of a college sort of survey intro class in that subject for the purpose of getting advanced placement into that subject when you get to college. So let's say you took AP English, you can start as, in a sophomore class, or at least not the just intro base level class. That's the point of it. You think those students are prepared to even take the class? Never mind pass the test. There could be a whole other show as to why AP is starting to get kids that don't know their address. And you might say, well, maybe they're extremely bright. They just don't know their address. Okay. Class of 30. She had that many problems in the class. 15-year-olds. How many 15-year-olds don't know their address, do you think? I mean, or would you expect to not know their address? Do you think that is something smart, savvy, ready for college level classes kids wouldn't know? I mean, maybe I sound like an old fuddy-duddy, but I knew my address when I was 7. Surely it's a safety measure, right? I mean, used to be a thing. They would teach you in like first grade. I think it was first grade or second grade when I was teaching. You'd give the kids a little sheet and practice their writing, and they would write my address, my name, my parents' names. They have pets, their phone number. They'd practice their numbers. Of course, they're writing it on a piece of paper. The teacher didn't keep it forever. They just looked at, oh, great, you did a wonderful job. Little check mark, little gold star. The point of it was that to make sure we didn't have any kids who were away from mom and dad all day long. Now that they knew how to hold a pencil, we're past kindergarten, right? You can hold a pencil, they know their ABCs, they can at least, tell the teacher and we can say, oh, it's an A and a B, whatever. So they could tell somebody if they got lost. I live at such and such Maple Street or whatever. This is my phone number. Back in the days when they didn't have their own personal cell phone, they just automatically call mom. So they knew these things. And you might say, well, you don't need to know it because the phone does it automatically. How many times have you been somewhere where someone asks you what your phone number is and you want to be like, "Oh, hang on, I have to look in my computer to find out what my own phone number is of this phone number." So, this is where we are. That's not smart. That's not educated. So, that's just one example and you can see her frustration. I would expect people like that to be looking for the earliest exit they can possibly take and still get their retirement. They're not going to stick around as some of my teachers did to the point where retirement was at, 70 or more. And you might think, oh, I shouldn't be teaching when they're, oh, I had some spry teachers. So being over a certain age doesn't make you not a good teacher. They just didn't want to retire. They liked it. That was their calling, whatever. I think now people are like, I'm out. You know what? I'll sacrifice some of it. I'm out. Early retirement. So I just wanted to show you that because that does fuel the so-called crisis, which then, of course, puts pressure on the colleges of education. I wouldn't say pressure, creates an incentive. Sorry, it's not pressure. It creates an incentive on them to recruit students to the College of Education. And we just saw what happens when you have an incentive to get more students in AP class. Do we need to talk about what that incentive is? Kids who might not actually belong in the class, but they're going to be in there anyway because, things are disproportionate. We don't have equity in the AP class. So you end up with AP classes like hers. Well, that goes all the way up the food chain to college, including the colleges of education. We have a teacher shortage. We got to get more people to become teachers. So you have things like more scholarships available if you go to ed school. You have things like classes at ed school that might appeal to an audience who are not necessarily interested in children per se, don't really feel a calling to help little kids become independent, knowledgeable, competent adults, but rather, small minds I can shape to be change makers. I'm an activist. I'll go recruit a lot of other little activists. So you start having more courses and more offerings, more programs that appeal. And maybe you get people to go over and say, government job, steady pay, great benefits, union protection, hard to get fired. And I get to do all this cool world shaping, mind shaping stuff. Now, where's the evidence that these kinds of courses are being offered, that incentive is translating into coursework? Well, when I was just on Twitter, sorry, I'm not going to call it X. I can't. It's Twitter. When I was on there the other day, I noticed that our good friend Alexis had posted something. I think maybe James Lindsay posted it, or no, he shared it. She posted it. She posted a whole thread, and then he, repeated it. And so I'm going to show you what this included. All right. So here's Alexis's fantastic thread. If you're not already following Alexis Pasternak, you need to be. She was on my show a couple weeks ago, talking about Pennsylvania, her district, but she does great research. So this is from my school, University of Pennsylvania Graduate School of Education, UPenn, Grad Ed, GSE. She says some courses and their descriptions from the University of Pennsylvania Graduate School of Education, GSE. And we'll go to the websites. Don't worry if you're wondering, like, is this real? We'll go there. All right. This is 5434. Now, this would not be one of your base level classes to take for just, I'm getting a elementary ed certificate and I need to get my certificate. I'm going to take that. This would be an upper level class, probably a master's level class that you could take to get your master's and so on. And here it is. Frantz Fanon, 1963. If you're not familiar with Frantz Fanon, he wrote Wretched of the Earth, decolonization narrative, that's his. Writes that decolonization sets out to change the order of the world. This course approaches decolonization in and around education. Not as a metaphor, not as a metaphor. I'm just going to let that hang in the air. Not as a metaphor. For civil and human rights-based social justice projects couched in diversity, inclusion, and equity. But as part of a range of political projects and experiments that have sought to fundamentally reorder global structures, systems, and relations of power. What do you think that looks like when it's not a metaphor? It's seeking to fundamentally reorder society. Though prevailing philosophies about the meaning and purpose of education cast schooling as a critical pathway to democratic, socially just, and inclusive societies, do they? I'm sorry, prevailing philosophies. I want to hang out there for a second. Though prevailing philosophies about the meaning and purpose of education cast schooling as a critical pathway to a socially just and inclusive society. Do we all agree with that? They started the sentence with though. This is an ed school student reading this, who will then be the student in the class. They're advancing this premise as if it's true. We've all agreed upon it. I sure don't agree with that. If I'd read this back in 1988 or so when I applied to graduate school, I would have said, wait, I'm sorry. Do they? First of all, what are the prevailing philosophies and who decided what they are? We don't get to hear what they are. Um, who said that the meaning and purpose of education was a critical pathway to an inclusive society? Silly me. I thought it was a critical pathway toward the success of the individual human being, which would then translate into a successful and just society. Aren't we often told that if you don't have individual, agency and ability to succeed and economic success and the ability to go out and, provide for yourself, that, you might have no choice but to commit crimes? I mean, I've actually heard people excuse theft as well, they just needed to eat. Remember the looting that took place in Chicago? They just needed to eat. Well, wouldn't learning how to function on your own and be able to get a job also help you find a job that could pay for your food so you don't need to steal? I thought that was one of the purposes of education. Even though I don't think education is all about getting a job, I thought it was like at least on the list. And inclusive society, we have equal rights under the law. We have a Bill of Rights. I don't think we need to have a separate approach in terms of education to produce that. We have it. We just need to keep it. So constantly telling people we don't have it, we have to teach this generation how to have it. No, we have it. We just have to keep it. So I know I've hung out here for a while, but I get hung up on words like this because we tend to gloss over them. We tend to just go blah 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 and look for the money quote. We look for the Marxism, or we look for something to jump out and bite us. And when nothing jumps out and bite us, we think, well, okay, so it's a class and it's about Frantz Fanon. And it's like, okay, what? Why is this a problem? What does it mean though? Okay, so for much of the formally wait, no, I jumped ahead. Sorry. The historical foundations and contemporary realities of formal education in the global South complicate these ideals. The global South. Are they learning to be teachers in America? Because maybe not. I guess some people could come to the University of Pennsylvania and become a teacher someplace else. But what's the global South? For much of the formerly colonized world, Western education was one of the earliest and most enduring imperial projects. Oh, here we go. Starting to catch on. Education was an imperial project. Actually, ironically, it wasn't a project of government at all until the progressive era. It really wasn't. And it's certainly not in North America. I can't speak for Europe, but it certainly was not a project here in that way. So if most of the teachers in this program are coming to teach in the United States and this is their prevailing philosophy, are they going to understand that it was the progressives that created the factory school for racist and xenophobic reasons, by the way? Yeah, they did. But what was xenophobic and racist about it was a lot of the progressivism in it, a lot of this stuff. The presumptions that people of certain races, were downtrodden or inferior, that couldn't learn in traditional ways, that the traditional ways were sort of white ways or colonial ways or imperial ways, and therefore we have to get rid of them because, well, we can't expect the dark people to learn in those ways. If that's not the most racist thing, I don't know what is. But it wasn't even when empires colonized and set up schools to teach the children, they produced fairly robust civil societies. Look at India. I'm not suggesting that, oh, it was all great that they were there and did what they did. That's not what I'm saying. I mean, there were some upsides. I think even people there would say the same thing in parts of Africa. The schools were teaching math and reading and English and writing and so on. How is that an imperial, like it's a negative thing? They had no education and no literacy, then they did. That opened up opportunities for them for economic advancement, more education, et cetera, and so forth, so they could be their own doctors, their own lawyers, their own everything. How is that bad? I guess I'm missing it. Which deliberately undermined indigenous systems of knowing. You mean the ones where they would give you some, the medicine man would come and say voodoo stuff over you, and maybe and you might still die, where you'd have a poultice for everything, and maybe some would work, maybe some wouldn't. What other indigenous ways of knowing? Not being able to read, not being allowed to know how to read. There are plenty of tribes that, women weren't allowed to learn. I mean, this is this kind of Rousseauian return to the primitive, everything that was before is better than what came next. And we're going to teach this in the Graduate School of Education. This course interrogates histories and contemporary realities. Realities? Contemporary reality? There's just one reality. I sometimes feel, you guys, when I say these things, when I have to read something like this and say, no, there's not a plural realities. There's reality and there's not. There's perception. And I'm starting to feel like a crazy person. I am starting to feel like what they want me to feel like. In other words, that when I simply say objective reality exists, things can be known. It's not just that I can do cool stuff with science, but never really know what it is that I'm actually doing, said Mr. Kant. No, I believe I can know exactly what I'm doing, and that will be true not just for me, but other people observing what I'm doing or reading about what I've done. if I document it properly using, the written word and math, things like that are universal languages, therefore they speak to everyone, then the truth can be known. At least the truth until we do more experiments and maybe find out something new, but things can be known. Not according to this class. By considering the various ways education has been part of decolonizing projects, we will investigate the relationships between education and indigenous ways of knowing and learning, colonialism, nationalism, conflict, class reproduction, spatial and social mobilities, among other thematic strands. Moreover, in centering the periphery, we will explore the theoretical openings that theory from the global south offers for decolonial epistemologies and pedagogies. Not offered every year. Well, good for, that's a blessing. So that's one. That's one of the classes. Then we go down to remaking US schools. Remaking US schools. Remind me, uh, Adrian, that I need to do a video of words of wokeism on ways of knowing. That's one that's on my list. It's not a word, it's words plural, but still. So this one, what is the purpose of schooling? Why does education seem to be in a constant state of reform? I have these questions. How best to close the entrenched and pernicious opportunity gaps that characterize school systems in the United States? This is such a moving target. What does that even mean? The opportunity gaps. Do you ever feel like they don't leave room for students who don't want to take a class or don't want to study a subject or don't care about anything there at all for other reasons? I think sometimes we interpret an outcome gap as an opportunity gap. Sometimes it might be, possibly. So if somebody did not receive the attention they needed in early grades as far as reading instruction or math instruction, that could create a gap in their performance such that they won't have an opportunity later to take calculus or whatever, and then that closes a bunch of doors as far as careers on the assumption they were interested in that. But taking into account the fact that even the majority of really, super academically inclined math students don't necessarily want to go into those fields or proceed all the way to calculus, I'm skeptical that we can call that automatically an opportunity gap. It might be, but we'll only know on an individual basis. And my concern is that they are in the education field to come up with new things to teach and new research to do. They decide this statistic means this, and we're now going to go teach another class about it. And you'll have a whole new crop of teachers who have that as a core belief. Oh, yes, outcome gaps represent opportunity gaps. There's only an outcome gap because somebody didn't get an opportunity to do something or have something. They didn't get access. And that is a gross generalization that can have far-reaching implications. You could apply the right solution for a handful of people, but you apply it across everybody, and now it becomes the wrong thing, really bad. I'll give you a case in point. In California, with the math framework, ostensibly to close opportunity gaps, they changed the framework and the pathways to getting to advanced math on the theory that doing so would improve outcomes for most kids, and that the kids who could do the advanced math, they'd get there anyway. They'll somehow get there. Even though there is no pathway for them to get there in time to do it in high school, they'll find a way, some other kind of way. So we're going to close the opportunity gap for the kids who aren't doing well at math, period. This is their argument. And no, we haven't created a new opportunity gap for the gifted kids, the advanced kids, the kids who are ready for calculus, like sophomore year or whatever. We haven't created an opportunity gap for them or closed a door for them. That's fine. We've just closed this one. So they also prioritize which opportunity gaps, so-called, to close and never consider that maybe they've created new ones. And now you've got advanced students who may never have the opportunity, because if it doesn't magically happen the way the writers of the framework seem to think it would, that they may not ever get to go on to one of those careers. And they could have, and they wanted to. And they wanted to. That's the key. So by not even taking into account that maybe the kids that weren't doing well and we're never going to get to calculus anyway, because that is not even remotely an interest to them. We tend to not be so interested in things we're not naturally inclined to do well. That's not even up for consideration. So topics include political movements for racial justice in schools, policy and legal efforts addressing equal opportunity, the rise of standards-based reform, school choice dilemmas. Now, this is 1450. This is a 1000 level class. Kind of wondering if that means that's year one. Hard to say. Don't know. Could be year two. Is this graduate? Is this undergrad? I'd have to look. But the point is, yeah, it's a first year seminar. Sorry, I just caught it. In this first year seminar, brand new person coming in. Hi, I want to be a teacher. Okay. First year seminar, we're going to consider and debate these questions as we explore the history and the politics of schooling. Parents, is that what you thought that future teachers would be taught in an Ivy League institution as far as coming into school to teach your kids? Or did you think maybe they'd go to the school to learn how to teach math, how to teach English, how to teach science, all that stuff? Even when I was there, we did have a class for each one of those, and they probably do too, but I didn't have this. All the politics had to be crammed into my English, my social studies, they had to be crammed into those classes, and they did. They did, believe me. They crammed them in to those classes. I just didn't have opportunities for things like this, and I don't understand why anyone would wanna take them and spend the money on them, but more importantly, how what do they count towards? Is this required? Do they get to pick it as, one of my seminars? I'm going to take this. So, how much of this is the average graduate taking and why? Then we have this diversity and social justice in American K 12. This is an upper level class. But now, additionally, by considering their potential to act as agents of change, students will devise and share strategies for anti oppressive educational practices. This is the teachers. Students in this case are the teachers. So this isn't even the professor is just going to tell them about stuff. This is a hands-on, I'm going to practice activism in graduate school so that when I get into my position as a teacher, I can be a more effective agent of change. This is, I mean, it really is Marxism 101. Thank you, Mac, for that comment. Let me put that up there. That is absolutely what it is. And people say, "But it's not Marxism. What are you talking about?" I'm like, "What else is it?" What? We have understanding how various markers of social difference mediate the privileging of some and the marginalization of others within K-12 schools. Additionally, by considering what else is that? What else is that? Oh, and then Matt goes on to say, this was becoming blatant when I was attending IU 20 years ago. Yeah, and as I mentioned earlier, I graduated from University of Pennsylvania in 1990, so a little longer ago than even that. And yes, I was being told teaching is a political act. No teacher out there in a classroom is, immune to this. You are doing something political. So I disagreed. I mean, disagreed in the sense that that is something I should be doing. I said, no, it's not. And the only caveat I would add is that if you're teaching in a public school, as I mentioned last week, you're in a socialist system by definition. And so I suppose, in theory, unless you want to fight against your own job or its existence, which, by the way, some teachers do fight against the system even though they're working in it. They're my favorites. um, you're going to be political to keep your job. It's sort of that's why I hate it. It's a conflict of interest on all fronts. The government has access to your money to go buy itself whatever curricula, messaging, etc. it wants, and then the teachers want to keep their job working for that state, for that government, so they become activists for whatever that government wants because they're the employer, not the parents, and it does become a political thing. But that isn't what my professor meant. My professor meant it's a political act on my part to go into the classroom and politicize. And that's the part that I had no interest in doing. I was like, that's not why I became a teacher. I don't want to do that. Moving on, we have pedagogy in action for critical education. Well, critical education is critical theory, like critical race theory, critical social justice theory in general, critical gender theory. They're all critical. The word critical simply meaning we're going to take apart and critique for the purpose of dismantling that which was, because somewhere in what was is power and privilege. And we need to dismantle that. And we need to center marginalized groups so that the powerful don't stay powerful and the marginalized don't stay marginalized. And that's the only way we can achieve that. So education itself and knowing how to do things and knowing things isn't going to get us there. We're not going to have a better society with more people having upward social mobility and so on. And of course, there's no such thing in their minds as downward social mobility, even though we all know that exists. It's, you're just going to stay where you are. That's a common fallacy. And so critical theory just holds if we dismantle the systems of power and oppression, and everything will be better, except for those people who allegedly held power. If they were judged to have had power and now you take it away from them, they don't have it anymore, but you've arbitrarily taken it away from them. How are you going to do that? Well, I think force is really the only way to do that. So this is no less than a class in how to teach. This is teaching teachers the importance of using manipulation and force to advance your own agenda for something vague called social justice and diversity and intersectionality. And all of this they claim is within education. Anyone spot the irony? Anyone spot the irony about an education school that's been around for, uh, since forever? Penn, we know, has been around about 300 years. And we know that the grad school of education has been around more than 100. So is there any irony in talking about how the system, how education is so oppressive and reproduces these things and so on and so on, as this elite school is teaching these people about this, first world luxury viewpoint? There are people out there who are like, no, I need to read, I need to know how to do things so I can personally be successful and feed myself and not be dependent on everybody else. And they want to sit and talk about this stuff, but they're the agents of positive change. I can't not see it. Maybe that's me. Um, so let's see. Crystal says, I wonder what parents would think if they understood that the expert teacher is only an expert in Marxism. That's part of why I'm doing this show, Crystal. It's part of the point. It was like, I think a lot of parents don't know what the teachers are learning in teacher college. I think they assume that a class like this is happening and, somebody's, sociology class for their bachelor's degree and liberal arts. I don't think they imagine this is explicitly in a teacher college, which is why I'm doing this. Um, and then Ego Brain says, we just can't escape the stuff anywhere now. They even have it stuffed into the Ohio bill for legalizing weed tomorrow. It gives preferential treatment to people based on race, gender, disability. It's true. It's included now in everything. So why wouldn't it be in teacher college? Of course it is there. I'm going to go back and grab some of these. Yeah, this is still, Crystal points out, yet so many teachers are still not being taught proper science of reading. That is absolutely true. So we heard all about science of reading, and it's so important, and we want our kids to learn to read, and yet they still haven't fixed the teaching of teachers to prioritize this. Even the continuing ed is still emphasizing the diversity, equity, inclusion stuff, still emphasizing SEL, counseling, mental health, all of these topics. Do you think maybe mental health would be improved if the kids could read? I do. Um, and then Just an Average Man makes the point, look at the pro-Palestine stuff after the attacks using the same Marxist arguments. That's exactly right. The decolonization stuff in that other class is exactly the kind of thing that teachers are taught. So you have a professor at the university, then teaches the student teacher. That student teacher takes it into the high school or a a middle school, even an elementary school, and begins to talk about these issues through this lens. And is it any wonder then that you get all the way up to the college students upcoming and they're just out there chanting the same stuff? It's just BLM with different flags. Um, and then Sarah Sophia says, like me, I didn't become a scientist to be a social activist. Exactly. Most people I know are, over 30, let's say, um, didn't go to whatever school they went to become an activist in that subject. Didn't take classes even in how to be an activist in this subject. They took classes in how to be a better whatever that subject was. Um, and then Mac is saying, "Oh wow, yeah, we are about 80 years into it," and he says 99% of what I was taught had a strong Marxist undertone, and the majors triple majored in philosophy, history, and anthro. It gave me a unique perspective on what was happening in our universities. It all goes back to the long march of communism. 100% true. Now, Mac, I've got to ask, um, did you feel ripped off? Did you feel like, you spent your time in college and money, I would presume. And did you feel at the end of it like that's not what I came here for? That they sort of stole something from you, namely the opportunity to learn things that were not pernicious, dangerous, poisonous, whatever. I mean, I'm curious because I feel very fortunate that in my college years in the mid 80s, I, I majored in American studies and it was still American studies in the literal sense, like 5 courses of American history, 5 courses of American literature, and it was, different writers and themes and different things, and then the history was, I specialized in the American Revolution and did all kinds of reading primary documents. It was fantastic. No complaints there. Even my art history classes were wonderful. The only class I had that was like, was sociology. That was a little weird, but I still learned some things. Even in that class, I'm like, "Oh, I didn't know that, for example, safety in numbers is a lie." There were some nuggets that I took out of the class, but for the most part, even the very political professors, and I knew who they were because they led protest marches and, burnt Reagan in effigy on the quad when that we, rescued people in Grenada. They called it an invasion, whatever. So I knew who the political professors were. I avoided their classes. They tended to be in the government department. And as I, understood from my own professors, like I knew the ones that were fairly left leaning, but they didn't bring it into class. It was like they were out on the quad, but then they come to class and they teach pretty much straight up literature. So I feel very lucky that I wasn't ripped off in that way. And I only got the glimmer of it at Penn in that social studies class and a little bit in my English class, children's literature class. They were pushing us to teach certain kinds of books and they taught us to teach this whole word garbage, which was absolute. I recognized right away this is a gimmick. And I did feel a little ripped off because I had wanted to learn to teach kids to read and I knew this wasn't going to work. But my feeling that way was like this much. And I'm wondering if you're talking 20 years ago, if you felt like it. So your answer is at first, but when I realized I felt I had a good education to do independent research and be more useful. Well, that's good. And then you said critical thinking and logic saved me. And I had one history prof who was an old conservative. He also saved me. So that's great. I guess the good news then, parents, is that, you know, as I said at the outset, there are some great professors, there are some great teachers, and if your child has a good head on their shoulders, it's possible for them to still eke out a good education. But I'm showing you this so you can be prepared when you're evaluating the schools you might send your children to, you're evaluating the colleges they might go to, you're evaluating the graduate schools, or if you yourself are a student or a prospective student, you can do the same and say, how much do I want to pay for this kind of stuff? How much is required? How much is elective? Even if it's elective, do I want to be on a campus where people went there so they could take these kinds of electives? Or would I prefer to be on a campus that focuses on more of the meaty stuff that I want to teach? These are questions that increasingly people need to ask so you don't accidentally wake up and realize you have to take 3 critical theory classes to graduate and they've got your money and you're not getting it back. That would be, you know. And then there's also this. Mind you, I was an island in a sea of sheeple. Oh, I so relate to that. Yeah, most of the students totally bought into that. Yes, I can relate to that. Absolutely, 100%. And Sophia says, don't send the students anywhere without giving them a strong inoculation from this crap. Completely agree. And that means you're going to have to do extra work at home. So, one of the reasons I am such a proponent of homeschooling with the younger kids is the inoculation is more organic. It's just living. In other words, you live in reality, you recognize reality. You're not a critical social justice person. It doesn't matter if you are any specific political part. That's not it. That's not the issue. If you're a person who still cleaves to reality, it says, yes, things can be known. And I don't buy into all this postmodernist garbage. And I'm not a Marxist. Capitalism's just fine with me. And I recognize that not everybody is as, you know, Ayn Randian as I am, but still a capitalist. Okay. Then your daily life is going to inoculate the child against this stuff. They will just grow up in reality. They will have it surrounding them. Then you'll choose books that are grounded in reality. You'll do science that's based on it and so on. And that is their inoculation. You don't have to do extra. You don't have to deprogram or reprogram and then put new stuff in and hope they listen, hope they don't get to teenage years and go, you're an idiot, mom, you're not the teacher, or I don't have to listen to you, dad, or you're just a white settler colonialist, misogynistic, paternalistic, whatever might come out of their mouths. Because I know people who've had, my kid was solid and then they went to high school or then they went to college. That doesn't tend to happen with the homeschooled kids. In other words, they weren't necessarily as solid as the parents thought out of public school. They just didn't really ever talk about what they were learning. But here's what they didn't have is they didn't have a solid philosophy of life. And that's so crucial. And you have so much more leeway in homeschool to give that to them. Or if your kid goes to classical school or a really good parochial school where they cover philosophy on some level and at least give them an explicit grounding, like the reason we know things and the reason we know that we know them is reality, is objective reality. They do that in those schools. And that is crucial. You can't just say, well, my kid's a really good student and they seem to have a great head on their shoulders. They could be wide open to this without a philosophy. Moving on. What do we have? Global governance and cooperation. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh, like where do we even go with this? Students will explore the role of global governance institutions in international development policy in facilitating or constraining progress toward the sustainable development goals. There it is. There it is, guys. The ed schools are now solidly on board with the global governance and sustainable development goals. Through course assignments and in class discussions with development practitioners, students will examine how actors and institutions, this is another word I'm going to have to do for words of wokeism, actors. It's fascinating to me the way they use language. Um, they they mean activists. They mean activists, but it kind of bleeds into practitioners, but because the practitioners don't actually know anything or do anything. They're quite literally acting. It's fairly literal. How actors and institutions, instead of individuals, instead of practitioners, instead of anything that would connote merit-based, evaluation of the people, we have this new word. Influence the global governance of education and its implementation in low and middle income countries. No discussion of what it's going to do to the prosperous, successful countries. No. Remember what I said about the math framework? Well, it's the same with SDGs. We've got to close this gap with these low and middle income countries. Oh, those guys, yeah, they'll be fine. The same thing what they said with calculus and the really brilliant gifted kids, or even just the smart math kids. They'll be fine. Except they're not fine. And they're not going to be fine. And all they've done is bring everybody down. And of course, we know that's what SDGs will do too. But they're teaching teachers that this is their goal. So, how do you think the teacher who takes a class like this and gets all indoctrinated in these ideas is going to treat students if their first job, let's say, is in a district where the kids are not marginalized, poor, or whatever, but just going to work in Winnetka, Illinois, upper middle class, upper income district north of Chicago? That's where I first started teaching. What do you think they're going to say and do in those classes to those kids up and then at New Trier High School, which is what the elementary schools in Winnetka and the middle schools feed into? Well, I can tell you because New Trier is one of the most woke public high schools in the nation because those districts were infiltrated by teachers who got stuff like this. And now the kids at New Trier, who absolutely used to be some of the finest public high school graduates in the nation, they're just activists. So there's that. Then finally we get down to, oh, now we have global citizenships. We have global governance and now a global citizenship. These are teacher training classes. I just have to keep saying that because I don't want anyone kind of popping in and being like, oh, there's a global citizenship class. See, EDU, that's the School of Education. It's not the School of Public Policy, the School of Psychology or Sociology or some other garbagey thing. No, it's education. People going into the schools to teach the littles. This course has two objectives: to explore research and theoretical work related to global citizenship, social engagement, and international development, and to discuss ethical and practical issues that emerge in the local context where development initiatives are implemented. And what in holy hell does this have to do with teaching anybody? What does this have to do with it? So you also might have a teacher who comes out with a master's degree in education, and you won't necessarily know that they filled up their schedule with this kind of stuff. Oh, they have a master's in education. Now, is their master's going to be the same, for example, as mine? Well, I didn't take any of this garbage. How are you going to know? Activism beyond the classroom. Hello. Yes, University of Pennsylvania is directly affiliated with UNESCO. If you're not familiar with UNESCO, let's actually take a look at something UNESCO is sponsoring. Just announced, I believe, or was this just announced, or was it registration is extended to April? Okay, so global competition for teachers teaching in the 21st century. It's officially launched. And, they're saying invite all educators, including teachers in primary, secondary, tertiary, and higher education, in-service or substitute teachers, and principals to participate in the international competition in the English language. This initiative will allow educators to gain theoretical and practical knowledge. Everything's theoretical with them. Theoretical. They're children. Not all. I mean, obviously higher education, but theory. And practical knowledge on the use of innovative technologies in education, enlarge their professional network, and adopt the experience of their peers. So they're going to use these competitors to, come up with new ways to use tech in the classroom, because we don't have enough ways to use tech in the classroom. Wait till I show you the trends. Oh my goodness. So I'm only going to spend a little bit more time on the course work, and then I'll show you the trends. Okay, so activism beyond the classroom, grassroots activism around education and social justice. And so if you're wondering, where did all of these activist teachers come from? How did this occur? In many cases, they were explicitly taught how in their ed school classes. It's not just they're not just, magically better at organizing. They're not just, magically all on the same page because whatever the zeitgeist or social media or they're young, all youngsters are revolutionaries. No, they're explicitly taught this is what they're supposed to do, and then they're taught how to do it. Yes, this is a great question. What the hell does adopt the experience of their peers mean? What does that mean? Do you know? The only thing I can think of is when they refer to experience, remember lived experience, adopt the experience of your peers. I don't know if they mean adopt. Do they mean like use it? Do they mean rec copy it? I'm very confused. I really don't know. And then Give Education says UN panel to that's what UNESCO is, to transform. There was a panel with Linda Darling Hammond. I wish I could find it. If you have the link handy to that and you send it to me, I can bring it up on the screen. But I don't want to delay the rest of it because we've already been going for an hour. So that is University of Pennsylvania's, what they've got going on. There's also developmental theories and applications with children. Students will consider whole child approach to understanding children's classroom behavior. This is getting into that psychosocial, SEL, all of that garbage. And then now we have school, society, and self by historically linking the development of educational initiatives to notions of power, nation building, and citizenship. This class furthers an understanding of the assumptions about the purpose of education within this democratic nation and its roles within our current social and political. Blah, 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 blah. Long story short, we're going to look at new ways to use education to push our social and political agenda. It's basically what that is in a nutshell. You might be wondering, hey Deb, is this only University of Pennsylvania? Is this like everywhere? What's the scoop? Well, I can't show you everywhere, but what I can do is I can show you a couple of the other schools that are prominent in teacher colleges, Columbia being foremost among Columbia Teachers College is pretty much arguably the first. It's almost tied with Penn as far as being influential, maybe more so. Look what they say, where true change begins. And here I thought it was a teacher college. I thought they were going out to teach children things that children needed to know. You see, you might still be laboring under the delusion that school is about the acquisition of knowledge and some skills, basic core skills, math, writing, reading, even to a certain extent, critical thinking skill, how to use your brain, how to use logic and reason and formulate a coherent argument, that kind of thing. Uh, you may have made me still thinking that's what it's for. That's what it's been. No, it hasn't been that way at all since 1983. And even up until 1983, it was only marginally for that. It was pretty much always for social engineering. It was a progressive project. As I said at the outset, was, founded mostly by racist xenophobes who looked down on, they felt sorry for the poors. Thought, they shouldn't aspire to too much. We'll just make sure they could be good little widgets in the factory, that sort of thing. And they should definitely be loyal Americans and not loyal to the Pope if they were Catholic, or loyal to whatever, other country they came from, because they were dealing with lots of waves of immigrants. So it was an assimilation project. It was, to a far lesser degree, a literacy project, but they weren't much interested in proficiency, just functional literacy and so forth. So literacy actually declined from 1848, when last we measured it before government schooling, and it was 91%, began to decline after government schooling came on the scene. And now we have it at 54%. So there's that. But yeah, where true change begins, their mission of the teacher college: to empower committed learners and leaders to build a smarter, healthier, more just, and equitable world through multidisciplinary knowledge creation, not acquisition or transfer, creation. They're going to create knowledge. I'll leave you to ponder that. Policy engagement and practical innovations across education, psychology, and health. Now, you might argue, well, Deb, we create knowledge when we do scientific experimentation. Sure, we do. Yeah, scientific experimentation. Experimenting on children in this haphazard, politically driven way they do it, live and in person in the classroom very often, I don't think that creates knowledge. I think it adds to confusion. It creates political talking points, and it creates financial incentives for people to create new products. Does a lot of that. But as far as knowledge creation, I'm deeply skeptical. I don't think we have knowledge about the multidisciplinary approaches they take with their theoretical frameworks and so on for decades. We certainly didn't have it with the Lucy Calkins garbage for way too long. I think we had it long before the 30 years that it took for people to wake up and say, no more of this garbage. But why should children have to suffer for 30 years while we create the knowledge that whole word and 3Q doesn't work? They thought they had the knowledge that it did work. They were wrong. So they didn't create knowledge. They had a theory. They created an experiment. They used the experiment. The experiment resulted ultimately in knowledge, but at the expense of our children. Meanwhile, classical education works. It's worked for thousands of years. The elite of the elite still send their kids for that kind of education. So is this really advancing a just society? Smarter, healthier, more equitable world. Our name notwithstanding, Teachers College was founded on the proposition that education alone can't correct our society's inequalities. Well, that ought to be axiomatic. I mean, nothing alone can correct society's inequalities. You'd have to go all the way down to the individual people and make them make different decisions. And I mean, free will exists. So we make a statement that's duh. And then we say that to maximize the life chances of all people, we must also support poor communities' physical and nutritional health and psychological well-being. This is a teacher college. So it just gives you, one indication. Now, looking at the number of people full-time, head count 3,220, part-time 2,596. That's a lot of people at this school of education who are going to eventually find their way into the education ecosystem. And this is what they're being taught. These are the ideas. These are the foundational beliefs and philosophies of these people. All right. Adrian's giving me something else. What is this? Let me give you another wild phrase. Think about climate equity and ecosystem management. Oh, that's a doozy. Thank you. Um, wow. Yes, you're right. Columbia is East Coast Berkeley. Very much so. Very much so. And no, they do not teach children or even young adults how to think. Christine is here. Christine Jones says, put theory into the world, not to understand it, but to change it. James Lindsay on the Marxist inversion praxis. 100%. Thank you for that. Thank you. That's exactly what they're talking about. Where true change begins. So that's Columbia. So you've seen Penn and Columbia, the two sort of most prominent, I would say, they're Ivies. But if you look up where, what are the best schools of education, you will also find that the Marshall Family School of Education at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, comes up. And I found something very interesting about this website, in addition to this extremely distracting video. Um, I had to dig a little more. We are education practitioners, policymakers, and researchers working toward a civically engaged to society. That's a lot more subtle, but it's still there. It's a school of education. So again, I think parents think, oh, schools of education produce teachers. Teachers who think their job is to do what, though? That's what you need to ask as a parent. What do the teachers coming out of the schools think their job is? Their purpose, their special purpose, as Steve Martin would say. I'm sorry. Now I'm going to have that in my brain. Um, Working toward a civically engaged society. How about a successful one, a functioning one, a productive one? I like to believe, although it turned out not to be true, that if you have a prosperous and productive society, those people will be civically engaged. Unfortunately, that was not the case. And here we are. Too many people phoned it in. I don't care about politics. And they didn't realize that politics very much cared about them. So while they were off, living life and doing all the productive things with their education, other people who are educated at Berkeley, probably amongst other places, were busy working on civic engagement. And now they want to come and teach your kids, likewise, how to be civically engaged. Um, so they go through, all of their stuff. They have what you'll notice in almost all of these education schools is that people of color are featured prominently in their visuals. Prominently. They are, when they say they're going to center marginalized people, they are not kidding. That is what they are doing. Um, They have all kinds of different degrees, but then you also look at what they put forward as far as in action, what they do. Um, See, here we go again. Here we go again. Connecting state policymakers to strengthen higher education, assisting nationwide higher education policymakers. So she can be white because she's, making change. So it's okay. I'm sorry. I'm very cynical. I shouldn't be so cynical. So that's them. And then I went and started poking around. What did they offer? And I found it quite difficult to find specific course listings. You'd have to dig and dig. But look what I see here. Learning equity and problem solving for the public good. LEAPS. It's an academic program. Combined program in education and psychology. Educational studies. So now we're going to study education itself. And I just thought that was kind of interesting. They do have some programs or specific programs for that. Then another school that is fairly prominent or well regarded is Michigan State. And I was scrolling down, going through all the requirements. Each of these, lists their things differently. And then I got to this one. This is for elementary and special education majors. These are courses that you need to take. Human diversity, power and opportunity in social institutions, diverse learners, and multicultural perspectives. Learners and learning in context. Teaching of science to diverse learners. And so on. So, and that's on top of their requirements. These are the requirements. They have writing, rhetoric, and American culture. It's the prefix for writing, rhetoric, American culture, etc. All students must complete. So they do have a sort of core thing that you would expect that they have to learn. And it is a very highly regarded school in terms of their ability to deliver those core classes, but they're also leaning heavily in this other direction. Um, so that's just, what I wanted to show you as far as what's going on in teacher ed specifically. Now, what I want to do is talk a little bit about the trends, where this is likely going to go, how they're going to take, because you're probably thinking to yourself, well, the teachers don't seem to have been learning a lot about actual instructional design, instruction. Remember, they're questioning all that. Why is that? What are they going to do instead? Well, what if the role of the teacher is changing away from being in a classroom with students on the day-to-day basis to teach them things and evolving into being, more activist oriented to teach people who create teaching tools what messages need to be in there so that they might have a completely different role altogether. And I'm starting to think that might be where they're going. I'm not sure, but I brought some material to show you and you can be the judge. First of all, Gavin Newsom just got back from, of all places, China. He went to visit China and he came back much more enthusiastic about technology in the classroom, as if we needed more technology in the classroom. California reaches major milestone in development of nation leading cradle to career data system to improve education effectiveness, equity, and access. Cradle to career. Came back from China, social credit system, to the United States, all enthusiastic. California's cradle to career data system just began integrating over 1 billion data points, providing unprecedented insight and transparency. Yeah, more transparency into your life and your kids' life than you into theirs to improve career outcomes for millions of Californians. How can they possibly know? I mean, do you go to government to improve your career outcome? Is that where you think what you think of when you think, I need to improve my career? I'm gonna ask the government to crunch some numbers for me and tell me what I should do. I don't think so. I don't think so. Um, Max says cradle to career, that's straight up communism. That was the original Soviet model. Yes, as it actually happens, and I hate to say this out loud. But during Glasnost, Reagan and Gorbachev made a deal that this would be one of the things they would partner on, share as, ideas about technology and education and all this. And I tell myself he was beginning to go the gip when that happened, but maybe I shouldn't. Anyway, so here we go. Today, Governor Gavin Newsom announced the state of California's cradle to career data system, C2C. C2C sounds a lot like ocean to ocean, right? Sea to sea, or California to China, or I mean, you fill in what you think C to C is. Um, C to C, I know it means cradle to career, but I have other names for it. In October 2023, it successfully received its first data installment from data partners and will now, who are they, by the way? Who are the data partners? Don't you think they should list them? And will now integrate more than 1 billion data points that have been collected and validated at the state level. How'd they validate them? C2C's integration of data will provide the public, researchers, and lawmakers, unprecedented, again, there's that word, insight that could improve education and quality of life for millions of Californians. It could, or it could not. The use of words is so clever. Could, but it didn't. Oh, but we said it only it could. We didn't say it would. And why do lawmakers need to be what? What kind of laws? Interesting. Well, Governor Newsom said by leveraging billions of data points, California's cradle to career data system will be a game changer for improving the quality of life for millions of Californians and highlighting ways to improve opportunity in the classroom and access to the workforce. You mean access to the students from the workforce. Um, through insights, there it is again, and innovation only made possible by the system. There you go. It's innovation is only possible through the government system. Does that even make sense? That the government system is the only way we have innovation, and we're using all these data points, and I mean, there's nothing innovative about that. There's absolutely nothing. It's a hindrance, top to bottom. Uh, let's see. We let's see. We've got yeah, future ready. That's Pennsylvania has career ready, future ready. Whatever happens in California does not stay there. And there are already things all over the country that are like this. And Christine says, see critical, see consciousness. Yes. Yes. There are many, many C to C's that have nothing to do with cradle or career. And you notice they don't really explain anything. The user using the user-friendly system, the public researchers and lawmakers will be able to access detailed information on education and career outcomes, workforce trends, and more, broken down by race, gender, ability, and geography to illuminate and address areas of strength and needed growth. In other words, to tweak the numbers, pick the winners, pick the losers, and move people around like little puppets, like little chess pieces, and align them both inside their education and possibly afterwards with where, we need them to be to achieve this oh so wonderful equity that we keep talking about. To get the needs of the system filled, not the needs of your child or their interests or their desires. Where's their agency in all this? Somebody else is monitoring all these data points about your child, comparing them to millions and billions of other data points, and probably going to deliver education in units, micro units to kids on the basis of that. And you won't have a choice. It's really quite sinister. Um, this milestone represents a significant step forward in our mission to establish a robust, comprehensive data system that provides a nuanced understanding of California's educational and professional journeys. Journeys, another fun woke word. This collective effort will, I mean, this government top down command and control effort will equip our state with the data and tools necessary to ensure that every Californian has the opportunity to succeed. But what we're not telling you is the way we're going to give some the opportunity to succeed is by depriving others. Equity, anti racism, critical theory, yada, yada, yada. They have to do this in the United States because, unlike the Soviet Union, where they, had the czar and then Bolshevism and then, Stalinism, um, we have a tradition in individual liberty. We have a history of individual students go to school, they learn what they want, then they go to college to study what they want, then they come out and pick a career that they want. And society be damned. And it really actually worked exceedingly well for a very long time. And it would probably still be working if government got out of the way and, people choose to do things. And you know what fills the gaps in the careers that, it's not nobody's sexing chickens anymore because nobody wants to do that and they're too well educated. Okay, so somebody innovates a new way to do it. Whatever. I'm just referencing a dirty job for Mike Rowe's show. But we got the jobs done. We built the most prosperous, successful country that humankind has ever known, with people choosing what they want to learn and choosing what they want to do for a career. That's not going to be allowed anymore. If you're not seeing that yet, please let me invite you to see that. And if this isn't compelling enough, then maybe we should take a look at the 12 emerging educational trends, 2023 to 2026. This is just across 3 years. Just across 3 years. But let's see. First, Max says, so once they have dumbed down the next 3 generations with equity, how do they plan to equip them to compete in the global job market with other nations who are excelling in actual education? They don't. There's a realignment going on, and China's going to be on the tippy top of it. For whatever reason, in the realignment and that I don't know if UNESCO has bought into it or if the WEF has bought into the alignment, the realignment that China, Iran, and Russia are going to be the 3 powerhouses, and the United States is going to be an also ran backwater, kind of like what the UK turned into. I don't know if they're on board with that, if they just don't realize it, if they're so filled with their own ego that they, think they can compete. I don't know. But China and Russia, to a certain degree, and in the hard sciences, believe it or not, even some people in Iran, although they, have that crazy wackadoodle death cult religion that is getting in their way. But there are some very, very smart people there too. They are not doing this woke crap. So to your point, as far as a global job market, most of the jobs they're hoping are going to be done with, computers and AI or whatever. But that's who's going to get those jobs. So I don't, already with China, you've got 1.3 billion people at this point. I taught for 3 years. I taught Chinese kids English as a second language, and I can tell you right now, there are 6-year-olds with better math skills than most high school students in America. Just average 6-year-olds. So, yeah, we're in trouble. If the point was to compete in the global marketplace, we better hope there are a lot of businesses that need, receptionists and, other jobs that probably are going to be replaced any day now with a non-person. So then what are they going to be doing? I don't know. Testing new products for people to buy, creating data, sitting on phones in VR, doing things and doing things and doing things and having it, having their neurology tapped. And why do I say that? Well, let's see. These are the emerging education trends. Neuroeducation. Number 1. The emerging field of educational neuroscience is shedding light on what works best when it comes to learning new concepts and skills. This is the part that confuses me here. Works best. To do what? It says when it comes to learning new concepts and skills. Like what? Like what exactly? Who's deciding what those concepts and skills are? Who gets to decide? Is it the same people deciding that we all need to have critical consciousness? Because that makes me nervous. Is it the same people that want us to think that, white people are inherently violent and racist and terrible? Because again, I don't really think I want people messing around with my neuroscience, my neurology to figure out how I can, better learn these new concepts. I don't want to learn these concepts. I know about them, but I don't want to integrate them. And the field is quickly discovering that many mainstream education practices aren't supported by research. For example, these common teaching methods have all been called into question lately. In-person lectures aren't supported by research. You know what's not supported by research? SEL. And yet they're doing it constantly. In-person lectures. Well, an in-person lecture could be good, bad, indifferent. It could be, what does that even mean? That is not a teaching method. That's not a teaching method. That's a delivery mode at most. Christine, somebody back me up on this. An in-person lecture is not a teaching method. A TED Talk theoretically is a teaching method. And I think they do rather well. Or is it an in-person lecture, not a teaching method? It's an in-person lecture, short, but that's what it is. Will we deny that they're effective? They're very effective. I don't agree with all of them, but they're very effective if the speaker's good and they were picked by TED Talks, presumably because they are pretty good. Okay. One size fits all lesson. What does that even mean? A one size fits all lesson can work really well for, let's say, little kids learning their alphabet. We're all going to sing the alphabet song. That's a one size fits all lesson. What's wrong with that? That works well. The reason teaching is an art is that the skilled teacher can judge which method will work best in this specific class with these specific students on this specific day with this specific concept or piece of information, and they use it. So there's not even one size fits all classroom, but that's a one size fits all method of teaching the ABCs. And it's worked very well. It's also memorization based testing. As far as a teaching tool or a teaching method, it's not a teaching method. It's an assessment method. Now we can debate all day long whether, memorization based testing serves a purpose. I think it does in some situations. I think it doesn't in others. This is what the progressives do. They refuse for all of their supposed wisdom and, "Oh, we're the smarter ones. We're the better educated people. We understand nuance." No, you don't. I've never seen people drop so much context of, like, you'd think it was heavy the way they drop it. Unguided homework. What does that even mean? Unguided homework. Well, I know what they mean. They mean you're doing homework not on a screen. And there's no one there telling you what to do or guiding you through the process or giving you lots of tips and tricks and hints and little things popping up left and right, or, what about this? Consider that. Instead, you've got to read a book and do some homework. And we all know the homework's getting a bad, it's just getting a bad rap. Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible. It's terrible. Some homework is terrible. Some homework is absolutely necessary. It depends. It absolutely depends. And then Christine says they've been trashing direct instruction for such a long time. Yes, absolutely. And yet, historically, it's worked phenomenally well. Doing away with in-person lectures can set us up for AI lectures. Thank you, Mac. You get it. You like instinctively get it. I think that all of this is setting us up for more tech. So it's not that in-person lectures don't work or they're not effective. They're not effective at putting tech in the classroom. Remember, this is about trends, 12 emerging education trends. The people reading this are likely going, ooh, what can I get in on business-wise, politics-wise, money-wise? So here we go. Oh, look, Annenberg learner. Oh, one of the Annenberg. These are some of the people are real tight with UNESCO and funding all the SEL and all this stuff. Neuroscience in the classroom, making connections. Pretty soon they want to put chips in our kids, and I'm not kidding. Different learners, different minds. One of the pillars of educational neuroscience is maintaining focus and attention during lessons. In China, they already have kids wearing electrodes, monitors, and things and stuff that allows the teacher to see exactly when they stop paying attention. And then the teacher can send a text directly to the parents. I'll see if I can find it and pull it up for you. I'm not making it up. Neuroeducation is a subfield where teaching approaches are backed by the principles of neuroscience. And there will be a lot of people out there go, that sounds very technical and good. Well, yes, it's backed by neuroscience, meaning like we know stuff about the brain. Therefore, if we teach using neuroeducation, then my child's brain is going to be smarter. They're going to like put the knowledge right in there, right? They can just sort of plug it in. Well, is that how it will work? We just put a chip in there and my kid's now smart, like a little robot. And there are people I think this is great. And look how they decide that it's trending. The number of searches have increased by 355% over the last 10 years. I bet like a full third of those are people like me going, like searching because we're terrified and we're trying to keep tabs on it. But maybe I overestimate. Then when I talked about micro learning gaining traction, it's no secret that humans have an inherent limit to how much information they can retain from a single learning session, especially when the subject matter is not covered again. But traditional education tends to overload them with long lectures. There have not been long lectures, except in college. I mean, and even then, not so much for decades. I mean, like, where are all these long lectures happening? Not in high schools, not in middle schools, and increasingly not even in college. There are very few classes that I've heard of where somebody's standing in the front of the room just lecturing for the entire class period. It's very rare anymore. Um, so they have micro learning. It's a form of spaced repetition in which lessons are broken into bite-sized chunks and repeated over time. Now, I do happen to know that this, when it comes to learning a new language, this works very, very well. It does. If you want to learn a new language, the Pimsleur method uses this. They uses this micro, and it works exceptionally well compared to other methods of learning a new language. Um, I don't know how well it's going to work for other stuff, but if this makes it down into elementary schools, it's going to have to be done using tech. You cannot deliver micro learning person to person. What does that then mean for students who need that who need the relational kind of learning? What about students who just get so addicted to screens that they never want to come off screens? We're seeing that with the majority of students actually, where they can't learn any other way. And that's dangerous. If you literally can't learn anything if it's not presented to you on a screen and bite-sized chunks, whatever, it's like you're cultivating ADD. There are times in our lives where we need to sustain our attention. So I'm just going to skip some of these. Online learning is gaining ground. Nothing to surprise us there. Um, STAR instructors. This is getting more into adult learning. There was something down at the bottom. New startups for homeschooling, of course. Inequality. Now they're lamenting, well, with all this tech, we're going to have to worry about the people who don't have tech. So there's going to be inequality expanding. So of course, they're going to be lawmakers going to looking into what they can get kids doing this stuff. Oh, we've got to look at the gaps by race. Definitely we have to do that. And then here, this one. Higher education adopts extended reality. Extended reality. So you're going to spend, $150,000 a year to send your kid to college where they're going to put on little XR and VR glasses and do things. Now, this is the current XR adoption, not adopting it, not adapting it, no plans to do so, early stages investment. Already adopted XR using for a few specific projects 39%. And then in 5 years, this is what they're expecting. Here's an example. Med students, instead of using an actual cadaver, they'll do this. And I know there'll be people in the audience going, well, you're a nutcase. This is great. This is fantastic. They don't have to actually cut up a real human body. Do you want the med student who actually learned on an actual human body that they had to get used to and touch and deal with the smell of it and deal with the textures and all the things, or this? I know which I'd prefer, but maybe I'm weird. And maybe y'all are like, nope, just as good. Just as good. So, and of course, this is where the SEL is coming from. They genuinely believe this. More than 90% of HR professionals, well, definitely, let's listen to them, agree that soft skills are very important to the future of recruiting. What I want to know about this is, what do they mean by soft skills? Here's what I think we do have a problem with because of all the focus on soft skills. We have a huge population of young people without empathy and compassion, without the ability to take the perspective of other people who disagree with them in particular, which is essential in the workplace. Without the ability, and not just people who are different, like, oh, you look different from me, but I completely agree with every political thought you ever had. But somebody who might, you know, just not agree or not validate them or not celebrate them or not have a cake in the lounge every other time somebody comes out or whatever. Having the skill to say, it's not all about me, something that pretty much every generation before now managed to figure out by the time we were 18, that not everything is about validating my existence every moment of every day and making me feel special and included in a sense of belongingness. So I think when they talk about, oh, soft skills, we need to work on these soft skills, we need to work on these soft skills, they're not wrong. These people don't. And another soft skill is like, what? What'd you say? What? Yeah, whatever. What? Yeah, okay, whatever. Can't make eye contact, can't start a conversation, can't hold a conversation. But you don't improve that by putting people on screens more to take surveys about their feelings, about how other people treat them, and force them to navel gaze multiple hours a week, sometimes multiple hours a day. We already have students at all levels, kindergarten all the way through, spending more than 8 hours a day on screens. 8 is now average, more than 8 hours a day on screens. So yes, they probably are deficient in soft skills, but what they're going to do is go back in and do more and more and more teacher training on soft skills, teacher training on empathy, to go into the classroom, teach the kids empathy, 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 and the kids are going to become more cluster bees running around. So those are the trends, and I just thought I would share those with you because I think that is really quite quite something, and it puts into perspective what is happening with the teacher training, because you don't necessarily need a teacher with good instructional skills or art, like artistic ability in that way, to read people and understand students, all that. You don't need that. You need activists to push the notion that education is about social justice. And then you need lots and lots and lots of technology and technology entrepreneurs to come up with new ways to take the messages that the teachers are going to want to put into their little lessons and feed them in very effective ways directly into the brain, and then get all the data on how the kids are reacting. So you can, this one agrees, you get a good job. This one, still too individualistic, back for re-education. I really genuinely believe that's where this is going. If you guys disagree, I mean, that's totally fine. Let me know. I did want to uh talk about like the tech in the like China, the what I mentioned that they were using. Wearables and education, and I'm gonna see if I can find it because it was really astounding when somebody shared this with me. There was a video, and it was students in China wearing this stuff. Um, Wall Street Journal, I think, had it. If I can find it. Yes, found it. Okay. I'm going to share this with you guys. This blew me away, but I think if this was from 2019. 2019. So I think that's why this is so relevant.
红色是表示你的专注力显示的很高。
Teachers at this primary school in China
蓝色是走神了，
know exactly when someone isn't paying attention.
白色就是你可能跟网络还没有连接好。
These headbands measure each student's level of concentration. The information is then directly sent to the teacher's computer and to parents. China has big plans to become a global leader in artificial intelligence. It has enabled a cashless economy where people make purchases with their faces. A giant network of surveillance cameras with facial recognition helps police monitor citizens. Meanwhile, some schools offer glimpses of what the future of high-tech education in the country might look like.
做出选择吧 ，Good job！
Classrooms have robots that analyze students' health and engagement levels. Students wear uniforms with chips that track their locations. There are even surveillance cameras that monitor how often students check their phones or yawn during classes. These gadgets have alarmed Chinese netizens. But schools say it wasn't hard for them getting parental consent to enroll kids into what is one of the world's largest experiments in AI education. A program that's supposed to boost students' grades while also feeding powerful algorithms.
为了就是国家的这个研究呀、发展呀，我觉得是没有问题的。
The government has poured billions of dollars into the project, bringing together tech giants, startups, and schools. We got exclusive access to a primary school a few hours outside of Shanghai.
同学们早上好。
To see firsthand how AI tech is being used in the classroom. For this 5th grade class, the day begins with putting on a brainwave sensing gadget.
A brainwave sensing gadget. Am I the only one horrified? Is everyone else watching this and going, that looks cool? I mean, that's what scares me, is that I'm like a dinosaur, that I'm watching this, and the parents said, no, oh yeah, it's great. It's their research, and oh, this is fantastic. They couldn't wait to sign their kids up. this to me is horrifying. I just think it is. I don't know.
Students then practice meditating.
现在想象我们眉心有一
Imagine warm light glowing between your eyebrows.
点柔和的光芒绽放。
The device is made in China and has 3 electrodes, 2 behind the ears and 1 on the forehead. These sensors pick up electrical signals sent by neurons in the brain. The neural data is then sent in real time to the teacher's computer. So while students are solving math problems,
Can we talk about the like electromagnetic waves that are being like it's surrounding this growing child's brain? They're literally wearing like a battery device on their head, and we're not worried about what that's going to do to their health. No, it's the monitoring is what's important. And all of this is positioned as being good for the students, but not as individuals, as little cogs in the society, right? They're like I c- it can't be healthy. I can't believe this is healthy.
a teacher can quickly find out who's paying attention and who's not.
说明这段时间他是有点在那走
Remember I said if the teachers are bought in to this, we have to close gaps and we have to do this and we have to do that, and this is all for social justice. You could end up with that's the role of the teacher. I'm standing in the front of the room and directing these little bots that are doing things attached to bots, attached to screens.
走神的。
A report is then generated that shows how well the class was paying attention. It even details each student's concentration level at 10-minute intervals. It's then sent to a chat group for parents.
就是他可以看到每个人的评分。
The reports are detailed, but whether these devices really work and what they exactly measure isn't as clear.
Exactly. It measures a lot of things. But where is the individual human and their agency and what they're thinking and what they want? And would they sleep enough last night? Did they get enough for breakfast? Are they happy? Are they sad? Why? We talk all the time about kids' mental health and their anxiety levels. Does this look like it might be anxiety inducing? Now, they don't look anxious. And I know that China is now several generations into this is what is expected of me, and I will put up with it because this is the way it is. When I taught my students, it was a rare student who colored outside the lines. Okay. So it was, they were sweet kids, but there's not a lot of that. So I don't think American kids, you can't just go take American kids and plug them in like this. I mean, you can plug them in, but I don't know.
We were curious if the headbands could actually measure concentration, so one of our reporters tried on the device.
但我没有感觉自己特别集中。
This is a new technology with still fairly little research behind it.
Theodore Zanto is a neuroscientist at the University of California, San Francisco. He was surprised to learn that this tech, called electroencephalography, also known as EEG, is being used in the classroom on children. It's usually used by doctors in hospitals and labs.
EEG is very susceptible to artifacts. And so if you are itchy or just a little fidgety, or the EEG wasn't set up properly so that the electrodes didn't have a good contact, affects the signal.
Despite the chances for false readings, teachers told us the headbands have forced students to become more disciplined.
上课回答我的问题，
So it's worth strapping a battery to your brain directly, where it has the highest likelihood of causing a tumor, because, whether it works or not to actually measure anything, it does make the kids worry that they might be documented for being for not paying attention. So they pay better attention. We used to have this little thing called grades and demerits and things that if somebody was really not paying attention, like being disruptive. Not paying attention is not an offense. There are many reasons people are not paying attention, daydreaming, drifting off, whatever. If you still turn in A-level work, as some of us often did anyway, even when you got a little bored in class and started to daydream, who cares? I mean, ultimately, who cares? If I'm not bothering you and I'm just sitting there and my mind's kind of wandering off to something else, like what I'm going to have for lunch or what I'm going to do after school. Hey, guess what? It's on me to make up what I miss. Ask questions, get the notes from somebody, or go read it, or to do well. That, the grades and the tests would take care of that. That's what, I get a better night's sleep the next night, whatever. If I'm disruptive, then we had this little thing called discipline. And only the person who was being disruptive would get disciplined. The whole class wasn't preemptively trained to, be afraid to do anything disruptive because something bad will happen to you or your parents are going to instantly notified in chat group. This is where we're headed. We like I said, we're going to get rid of the old because it's presumably bad because disparate outcomes. And we replace it with something that treats everybody the same way. What is this not a one size fits all method? And pat ourselves on the back. We did something good without even thinking of the possibility that we're creating another, 1 or 2, 3, 5, 10 bigger problems that are harder to undo.
就是他们的声音会比平常更响亮。
Teachers say the students now pay better attention during class, and that has made them study harder and achieve higher scores.
上课认真听讲，作业做的基本上是全对的。
All of my assignments come back with perfect grades.
But not all students are as enthusiastic. This fifth grader, whom we caught dozing off in class, told us his parents punish him for low attention scores.
So, we're very worried about parental abuse, but let's put something on the kid that notifies the parent every time he's slightly dozing off, and then his parents are going to punish him, and who knows how they punish him, and then he's got to come back to school and be all anxiety ridden the next day. Does this seem like a good idea to you guys? I don't know. So I just wanted to share that there's more to it, another minute, but you get the gist. It's pretty crazy. It is pretty crazy, and it is a behavior modification tool. And so Christine says, I can see this being embraced by the meditation mindfulness crew, like the heart math crew. Yes, heart math, they want them wearing monitors too. Biofeedback is very enticing. It's also data points. It's more data points. They want as much data as they could possibly get. So the heart math people, they push all their, oh, heart math, and we're going to be one heart, and we're all connected, and we're going to blah, blah, blah. But what a great gimmick, huh? They can get you to buy into their wackadoodle spiritual thing and pseudoscience and get you to start documenting, getting kids to wear electrodes and documenting the stuff, but they own it. It's proprietary. They can sell that data. That's the value, not the products they sell you, not even this kooky, ideology or whatever it is that they'll sell you trainings and seminars and all that. No, it's the data that they're going to collect and own and then sell to people who use data to sell things. Right. A Baker says, of course, they're more focused. They're terrified. Agreed. Mom's going to kick my butt if I get home and I get low scores. And it is this is also the philosophy of mask wearing as protection, but in reality, it's a tool of nudge culture. 100%. So when you see trends, even in this country about, neuroeducation and this and that, and then you see teacher colleges focusing on all this social science-y, social justice, critical pedagogy, I hope that your takeaway from the show is that there's very little instruction about instruction. There's very little going on to teach the teacher how to teach. And a whole lot of theory and a whole lot of teach the teacher how to be an activist, how to turn your kid into an activist, how to look at the world in a new way, look at their students in a new way. If you can get millions of teachers, not only to be government employees who are loyal union, members and so on, but to look at children. So you have a ready-made little army working for the government that believes that children are tools of political agendas and social and economic and political change. you don't have to go out and recruit from the general population an army to do that. There they are. They're the teachers. And even if the kids are on machines and screens all day like they are now, they sit on Chromebooks. It's not like teachers are standing in the front of the room teaching kids now. They're like, okay, open your Chromebook. The assignment's in the Google Classroom. Go do it. I'm here if you have any questions. Maybe they give like a 10 or 15 minute. And again, not the good ones, but the rest, the majority. And then you see the crew that will be coming in. So they're not doing a lot of instruction right now. And to the extent that they are, it's very, like political rally kind of instruction. Let's make posters for BLM and chant and march around the room. My daughter, my middle daughter in 6th grade, her first week of school, they made BLM posters and they marched around the room chanting "No justice, no peace." She had no idea what she was doing or why. So she just did it. One of her friends whose parents had, sort of already prepped her that this kind of stuff was going on. I hate to say it, I was somewhat clueless that this would go on right there in the classroom. Hadn't prepared her, but one of her friends sat still and didn't get up, refused to get up, refused to march around, refused to put her fist in the air, just didn't do it. And my daughter saw her sitting there and was like, it was the first she realized, like, maybe I wasn't supposed to, maybe I shouldn't have done this. So she came home and she told me about it. And I said, well, it's okay. You didn't know, your teacher shouldn't have made you do, shouldn't have asked you to do that. But what your friend did is also, good too, because you shouldn't get up and say things you don't mean, or you don't know what they mean. And that went on, not every single day, but I'd say 2 days out of 5 for the rest of the year of some kind of activism going on in the classroom. That's what teaching has become. So, let's see, what else have we got? BL says employers will jump on this, and I don't just mean in China, 100% they will. They are, they're having turnover issues, they're having all kinds of problems. Any data they can get that will give them an indication of what kind of employee somebody's going to be. But only jobs that people who are trained like this to, to be, they're not going to be jobs in innovation. They're not going to be jobs in doing anything creative. It's just the latest factory worker, but you're producing data. Paul says, horrifying to have seen this before and still find it hard to believe that Klaus, Justin, and Macron think China is the model. They do, though. I mean, Gavin just came back from China and he's all excited about all of this stuff. And A. Baker says, I'm fighting with my child's school not to stop with the iPads in class. It's out of hand. And that's a fight. That's a really big fight, because for every parent that hates it, there are probably 2 parents that love it, think it's great. Oh, but my kid's going to be prepared for the 21st century with high-tech skills. Like I said, I'm an old fogey and I've plenty enough technical skills, and I didn't grow up with computers at all. We didn't have cell phones. My first personal computer was at grad ed, and it was a little bitty Macintosh. The little ones that were like, the screen was this big and it sat on your desk, and it had a dot matrix printer and all that. That was my very first personal computer in 1989. And I went all the way through school without technology, somehow managed to do it. Somehow the people that went through school without even a calculator, an actual calculator, managed to put a man on the moon using human calculators. But it's like we forget. We have this very convenient memory that forgets about all the growth and development of Western civilization before all of this tech, and nothing. The children won't be ready. It's like, for what? I'll tell you what they won't be ready for is to think. They won't be ready to know anything, to reproduce anything that has been on their own. They don't know how to do stuff. And I will finish the show by recommending to you, if you want to laugh, maybe cry a little bit, but mostly laugh, and see that at least the Parkers get it. Watch the latest South Park. It is absolutely hilarious, and it touches on this very thing of what happens to people when AI can do all of their jobs and nobody knows how to do anything. Nobody knows how to make anything, fix anything, do anything with their own hands. It's hysterical. And I think it's also a warning. So if nothing else, if you have a kid who's, strapped to technology all the time, think about ways you can, fun ways to teach them how to do stuff at home, how to use tools, how to, cook, how to sew, how to work on a car, how to, just to fix something simple. These are things that we, could very well be a problem. What I don't get is the same Hollywood that produced The Walking Dead, Fear the Walking Dead City, or whatever the heck, all these Walking Dead iterations, and I've watched most of them. It's all in there. They get it. Year zero, human nature takes over when things are scarce. Look what happened even to the people in Venezuela. That gets you pretty close to year zero. And there were people having to walk to the store carrying a big sharp kitchen knife just to be able to get, to and from the store and keep hold of whatever they managed to get at the store, if they could buy anything, if they had any groceries to buy, because they would end up probably having to fight off a few people who wanted to steal it from them. Other people tried to grow their own food, and that didn't work out so very well because they didn't know how to do it. Or they would have to go and steal it from farmers. And this is what happens. And that was one of the most prosperous countries in South America, and over a period of 10 years, prehistoric. It was below third world standards, all because of communism and government taking over everything. So, yeah, the early people in the space program used slide rules. Slide rules are still, I think, really helpful to know how to use. Anyway, thank you so much, everyone who came and participated. I'm glad I got to read more of your comments. I really appreciate all of you who join in on these. And I know to a certain extent, I'm sort of preaching to the choir. So I count on all of you to try to share these broadcasts. I wish I could break them up into shorter bits, but it's very hard to walk through this stuff quickly. It needs to be discussed and explained and reacted to. And there's just not a quick and easy way to do it. So if people need to know what's going on, please share it. Please also like the broadcast if you haven't already. Subscribe if you're not subscribed already. And if you are inclined to support the work I do, there are multiple ways you can do it listed down below. And I also have my Woke Screen platform with t-shirts, mugs, and of course the membership itself, where I do two custom live streams per week that are private. So you might be interested in that. Thank you so much. I hope you all have a great rest of your week, and I will see you next week for another episode of Dissident Dispatch. Have a great one.